Watching the tech industry talk about nuclear power right now is a bit like watching someone talk about a new gym membership on New Year's Day. Everyone agrees it is the best, healthiest option. Everyone wants the results.
But actually going to the gym? That means early mornings, heavy lifting, and years of disciplined effort. The tech industry loves the idea of nuclear power. It is clean, it is dense, and it is reliable. But actually building a reactor means navigating a labyrinth of regulations, multi-billion-dollar price tags, and decades of public skepticism.
So, for the last few years, the hyperscalers have been standing at the edge of the nuclear pool, dipping their toes in, making a few strategic investments, but largely hoping someone else builds the pool for them.
But as the demands of artificial intelligence push the existing grid to its absolute breaking point, dipping a toe is no longer enough. The tech industry is finally realizing that if they want the clean, infinite power they need to scale AI, they are going to have to dive in. One small thing up front. We genuinely love these companies as stories, but we're explaining them, not recommending them.
So, treat all of this as food for your own thinking, not financial advice. Stay curious, stay a little skeptical, and make your own calls. Welcome back to The Working Thesis. Over our previous episodes, we have traced the $2 trillion AI backlog from the initial promise through the massive grid bottlenecks, down to the copper wiring, and into the frantic scramble to build natural gas bridges.
Natural gas is solving the immediate problem. It is keeping the lights on today. But everyone in the industry knows that bolting fossil fuel plants onto data centers is not a sustainable long-term architecture for human compute.
Which brings us to the final chapter in our current arc. The nuclear question. If natural gas is the bridge fuel, nuclear power, and eventually perhaps fusion, is the final destination.
Today, we are going to look at why nuclear energy is the perfect match for AI, the hurdles holding it back, and the incredible irony of tech giants resurrecting some of the most infamous infrastructure in American history just to train their models.
To understand why the tech billionaires are so obsessed with this, you have to look at the energy profile of an AI data center. A massive training cluster does not want intermittent power. It wants exactly the same massive amount of power at 2 p.m. as it does at 2 a.m.
It requires what grid operators call firm baseload power. Wind and solar are clean, but they are not firm. Natural gas is firm, but it is not clean. Nuclear energy is the only technology we currently have that hits the holy trinity for AI. It is firm, it is clean, and it is incredibly dense.
Energy density is crucial. You can generate a gigawatt of power with solar panels, but you need thousands of acres of land to do it. You can generate a gigawatt of power with a nuclear reactor on a footprint small enough to sit right next to the data center itself.
It is the perfect technological marriage. The most energy-dense compute architecture in history, paired with the most energy-dense power generation in history.
But building a new nuclear plant from scratch takes a very long time. So the immediate near-term nuclear strategy for the tech industry involves looking to the past. They are scouring the country for retired nuclear plants that they can bring back to life.
And this has led to one of the most remarkable, ironic developments in modern industrial history. Microsoft recently struck a massive deal to purchase power from a restarted reactor at 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania.
The site of the most famous nuclear incident in American history is being resurrected, rebranded, and plugged directly into the AI boom. It is a stunning pivot. A facility that defined the end of the first nuclear era in the United States is now defining the start of the second.
Because just like the old coal plants we discussed in our last episode, a retired nuclear plant still has the water rights, the security infrastructure, and the priceless grid interconnections. If you can get the reactor permitted to restart, you skip a decade of red tape.
But there are only so many retired reactors you can restart. To truly scale, the industry is placing its bets on a newer technology, small modular reactors, or SMRs.
The promise of SMRs is right there in the name. Instead of building a massive, custom-engineered, multi-billion-dollar concrete dome over 10 years, you build smaller, standardized reactors in a factory. You ship them on a truck, drop them into place, and turn them on.
If a data center needs more power, you just drop another module next to the first one. It is an infrastructure approach that perfectly mirrors the way tech companies think about deploying server racks. It is scalable, modular, and repeatable.
That is the vision that has attracted billions of dollars from tech executives and venture capitalists. They want to turn nuclear power from a bespoke, high-risk construction megaproject into an assembly line product.
But here is the hard reality check. As of 2026, the SMR vision is still largely a vision. This is fundamentally a 2028 to 2030 and beyond story.
These reactors are what the industry calls first of a kind. And first-of-a-kind hardware is notorious for being late and over budget. We simply do not have a proven track record of the cost and schedule required to deploy a commercial SMR at scale in the United States.
The physics work, the engineering is sound, but the supply chain to mass produce them doesn't exist yet. It takes years to build the factories that will eventually build the reactors.
So while the hyperscalers are signing agreements and investing in these SMR startups today, they cannot rely on them to power the immediate backlog. The technology is incredibly promising, but the timeline is deeply uncertain.
And even if you can manufacture the SMR perfectly, you still have to get permission to turn it on. In the United States, that means dealing with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, or the NRC.
The NRC's primary mandate is safety, as it should be. But their traditional regulatory framework was designed to evaluate massive, bespoke, gigawatt-scale reactors. Trying to push a modern, factory-built SMR through that legacy framework has been painfully slow.
However, there is a silver lining here. Recognizing the national security implications of falling behind in AI, the NRC is actively moving to speed up and streamline their licensing process. They understand that the regulatory timeline has to adapt to the new modular reality.
It is a delicate balancing act. You cannot cut corners on nuclear safety, but you also cannot spend 7 years reviewing the paperwork for a standardized reactor design.
Interestingly, the tech industry isn't just complaining about the bureaucracy. They're actually deploying AI to help solve it. Both NVIDIA and Microsoft have built specialized AI tools, specifically designed to help nuclear companies navigate the regulatory permitting process.
They are training models on decades of dense, highly technical NRC filings and environmental impact reports. The goal is to use AI to draft the thousands of pages of necessary documentation faster and with fewer errors, shaving years off the approval timeline.
It is a fascinating feedback loop. The tech industry is using artificial intelligence to accelerate the permitting of the nuclear reactors that will eventually power the next generation of artificial intelligence. But even with AI streamlining the paperwork, who actually owns the reactor when it is finished? This is where the tech companies draw a very hard line.
The hyperscalers are very happy to sign power purchase agreements or PPAs. They will promise to buy every single electron the reactor produces for the next 20 years at a premium price. That provides the revenue certainty needed to get the project financed.
But the tech companies do not want to be nuclear operators. They do not want the liability. They do not want the operational complexity. And they certainly do not want the regulatory burden of handling fissile material.
They want to buy power the exact same way their clients buy cloud compute, as a service. They are willing to fund the ecosystem, but they are insisting that traditional utilities or specialized nuclear companies actually own and operate the hardware.
And that aversion to ownership is understandable when you look at the broader societal concerns surrounding nuclear energy. You cannot discuss this topic without respectfully addressing the very real challenges of waste management, non-proliferation, and public acceptance.
SMRs may be safer and smaller, but they still produce radioactive waste that requires secure, long-term storage solutions. And when you start talking about deploying dozens or hundreds of these reactors across the country, local communities are going to ask very tough questions.
Beyond public acceptance, there is the fuel itself. Many of these advanced reactors require specialized, highly enriched uranium fuels. Right now, the domestic supply chain for that fuel is incredibly immature, requiring massive investments just to ensure the reactors have something to burn.
These are not trivial problems. They require societal consensus, federal support, and decades of committed industrial policy. You cannot solve them with a software update.
When you zoom out and look at the entire landscape we have covered, a clear timeline emerges. In the immediate present, the $2 trillion AI backlog is bottlenecked by a saturated grid and a shortage of transformers.
To bypass that bottleneck over the next 3 to 5 years, The industry is scrambling to build natural gas bridges. It is imperfect, but it is available.
But the long arc of this story undeniably points toward the atom. As we move into the 2030s and beyond, nuclear fission, and eventually the holy grail of commercial fusion, is the most durable, logical answer to the compute demands of advanced AI.
The data centers of the future will likely look very different from the warehouses of today. They will be integrated, isolated fortresses of compute, drawing infinite, clean power from the reactors sitting right next door.
And that brings us to the end of this particular chain. We have followed the promises of Silicon Valley all the way down to the wall socket, the copper wire, the gas turbine, and the uranium fuel.
It is a reminder that the digital world is entirely dependent on the physical one. You cannot have artificial intelligence without concrete, steel, and electricity. The constraints on our future aren't just in the algorithms, they are in the infrastructure.
But this is not a hard stop. The story of the AI power problem is still writing itself every single day. The grid is evolving, the nuclear startups are testing their designs, and the scale of human compute continues to expand.
There is much more of this chain to follow, and the landscape is shifting faster than anyone predicted. The story keeps developing, and we will be right here tracking it as it does. For now, thank you for joining us on this journey through the infrastructure of the future. See you next time.
That's a wrap for today. Thanks for thinking it through with us. We're just testing our theses out loud, one day at a time.
Catch you on the next one. Stay curious and tell us where we're wrong.